I think a lot of times people think marketing is just there to do proposals and interviews and holiday gifts and gift card. All this stuff is so transactional. Every single marketing activity that we do within my team, it should have three purposes. It should either be helping us find the next client or the next project. It should be helping us attract or retain talent, so our internal audiences, and it should be building our brand in a way that we want to be. So it needs to be in places that we want to be seen and recognized in.
Welcome to the Intangible Brand, where we explore the connection between employee experience and client experience and the hidden forces that make brands stick. I'm Jerry Janaria, and I'm joined by my co-host, Carl Winstead.
Today, we're joined by Jennifer Sebranek, who's Principal and Chief Marketing Officer at GBBN Architects. Jennifer's built her career inside professional service firms, helping architecture practices think more clearly about brand, growth, and the role marketing plays in firm culture and leadership. Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us today. We are very, very glad to have you here.
I am thrilled to be here and happy 2026.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it is a pleasure to have you on the show, Jennifer. And I'm thinking that as we start here, our listeners don't know much about you or your background yet. So maybe you could walk us through a little bit of your path, how you landed at this unique intersection of marketing and leadership and architecture.
Yes, absolutely. So I am with GBBN. We are a full service architecture firm, about 106 people located in Cincinnati, Minneapolis, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, and Beijing. And one of the great things that we like to say as architects is we like to positively affect people's lives by the designs we bring on board. And as I sit here and think about how I landed where I am in marketing, leadership, and architecture, I attribute it to two things, people and places. And that's where my journey really begins. I was born in a very small rural town in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina. I think growing up in a small town, especially a town that was really struggling economically with the factories moving across seas and tobacco farming going away, I got a really good perspective of a struggle and how that community works together to thrive. After high school, I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, to NC State to go to college there. Go Pack! Yeah, Wolfpack. And I wish y'all could have seen young Jennifer walking into Raleigh, North Carolina for the first time because it was, I think, the first time I really saw skyscrapers and that many people. Raleigh gave me a great perspective, another perspective of how communities work together, even at a larger size, how they come together and move forward. After college, I moved to Chicago, sight unseen. I was offered a job. I didn't know a single person. I just moved and I gave it a go. Chicago, another big city, another different perspective. What I loved the most about Chicago is also gave me a new culture, a Midwestern culture that I wasn't quite as familiar with as my Southern culture. And really got another perspective about how communities work together. I met my husband. We had a chance to move to England for 3 years for his job. And that, again, another perspective, another culture, more people I met. And finally, we landed in Cincinnati, where we've been here for almost 16 years. And this is a brand new community, a brand new culture, a brand new culture. And I think all of those different living experiences really have helped shape me in understanding how communities work together for progress and sometimes not progress, and what makes a good community. And that really drew me to the field of architecture. I started working for a developer here in Cincinnati and then landed at GBBN 14 years ago and have really been focused on building the brand, looking at our next level of growth and where we can actually make more positive impact as a community.
That's awesome.
Wow. All right. So I'm going to go back for just a second and ask
Okay.
a question. So you said Western North Carolina. Where are you
Yeah,
from?
I'm from the foothills. So I'm from Mount Airy, North Carolina. I'm
Oh my gosh.
literally from Mayberry. Do you know Western North Carolina?
I do. I grew up in Hendersonville,
Yes, yes,
but,
yep.
but one of my projects on my own was doing the, master plan for downtown Mount Airy,
Oh my goodness.
and I did work out at White Sulphur Springs and some of that
Yes.
kind of stuff, so yeah, how about that?
Yes, my mom and I still have family there. I'm going back next weekend, so, it's a great place to be from, but,
That's
yeah, downtown is
that's cool.
thriving. I can't there's a lot of cars happening the other day when I was
Yeah.
there.
That's funny, yeah. Well, it's interesting that you talked about that, but how, your kind of journey from small town to this market, this world. I was sort of the same way. I mean, from Hendersonville, I thought Raleigh was gonna be was just the biggest place, and it was so cool, and wow, there was actually, more going on. Um, but I knew I wanted to be in the AEC industry when I came in, so you kinda had a little different path, which is interesting to hear how yours sort of has happened. It's interesting to know, especially from somebody who is not from an architectural background originally, it's an interesting space to be in. What has kept you in the AEC industry?
It is an interesting space to be in, and as a business major, it was one that I didn't know about. I think in
Uh,
our colleges, a lot of our business school advertising marketing, it really focuses on business to consumer marketing, ad agencies, the things that you see in the movies, and they don't do a great job of showing you that there's other ways that you can market and connect with people and through professional services. So I always say that I want to write a kids book that says you too can be an AEC marketer. Here's how.
right.
Because we see it a lot. We see the other side of advertising a lot, especially in books and TV. So I that's like one of my goals is to make help college students see that this is a path that they can take. The professional services, I particularly like the architecture one. And I think the thing that I love the most about architecture is that at the end of the day, if everything goes right, I can go and walk up to the space and physically see it and see the impact that we made. And I say we, I'm a marketer, I'm not an architect, but I one of the things I really appreciate about my firm and especially this industry is that everybody understands that it takes so many people for projects to happen and that understanding and recognizing the contributions that everybody makes to making our projects actually come out of the ground is really important. So
Mhm.
I always tell other marketers that if your company is not recognizing that marketing has a role in making these projects happen, then there's some education that needs to happen about all the things that you're doing to make our projects thrive and happen in our communities.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's such an interesting and important point about the difference between more consumer oriented marketing and advertising and what we, think of with Mad Men and all the
Yeah.
depictions that we have on
Madison
TV of it.
Avenue.
Right, Madison Avenue and what happens inside professional service firms is different, right? It's a different approach to marketing. Um, there's some elements that are similar, right? Like logo and messaging and all those kinds of things. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what does marketing really mean and what does brand really mean to you as a professional service marketer that might be, you know, useful, different from the traditional ideas about it.
I often wish that our brand could just be our logo and our website and all those tangible assets that we control and we can control the message. But I know all of us here in the space, we understand that our brand is so much more than just those assets. It is what others think about us. It's the experience they have when working with you, and um, and that is probably the hardest part of our job as marketers in this industry is helping coach our professionals that are out there into saying, "You are our brand. You are living and breathing our brand." Our team can put 1,000 LinkedIn posts, we can create fun little Instagram reels, but at the end of the day, the biggest impact that our clients will feel is how they feel when they work with you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so that is we rebranded about 10 years ago and really wanted to get our brand solid, our messaging solid. And that, that would take like 75% of my time. Now, if I look at what I do today, 75% of my time is working with our professionals and helping them talk about what is our client experience? How are we showing up for our clients?
Hmm.
What do we want it to feel like when people say GBBN? And that is and because people hire people.
Mhm.
My our CEO once told me every message sends a message, and understanding that when our architects show up at a job trailer, whatever that interaction is, that's becomes pieces of our brand that then creates this holistic picture. So it's really trying to, as much as we can control what people think about us, means that we have to really think about how we show up and then intentionally be helpful and intentionally live our brand.
You're
So
speaking our
it's
language.
Yes, I know, and that's so much about this internal culture, right? And
Mhm.
you can't if you just update your website and your logo is a window dressing, this is really about living your culture and understanding your purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer and I, when I came off to NC State, I actually started in visual design, and that was the closest thing I knew at the time to sort of marketing. And I realized that I was spending a lot more time down in the design studios and people building models and sort of made that move. But I feel like that gave me a little bit of just background into. I mean, it wasn't really brand strategy, but it was really about something besides just architecture.
Sure.
And, I think that one of the things that I won't say we struggle with, I think it's a challenge, is getting architects and designers and project teams to really understand brand strategy. They understand design and they understand, the buildings and the spaces, but in what you do, have you found, a pathway to help, us architects and designers and project teams actually sort of live into, a brand strategy and really understand it? I think you started giving a little bit examples like the job trailer, but, can you maybe go a little bit further with that?
Sure, yeah. There's two moves that we focused on. One is when we rebranded, and then the second one is the continued training.
Mm.
Starting first when we rebranded, we knew that we needed to do a new brand to signal to the marketplace that we've evolved in who we are. And as we started to really work on how do we do that.
Mm,
I suggested that instead of it being a marketing rebrand, that it become our company rebrand. So I intentionally pulled together a small working committee that included architects,
mhm,
design, it included people within our firm, some that I knew were going to be really loud about their opinions, some that I wanted to hear, like, they not the loudest people in the room, but I wanted to hear what they thought. Also what I would call influencers of our organization, those that can really get things that happen. And I pulled together this small team, and our job was to do this rebrand. And we called we would have a really small working session, and then we would go out and get feedback, hear people what they're thinking, share what we're doing, and then come back and then do another working session and then go back out. So we really wanted to try to socialize our rebrand throughout. I mean, we weren't asking definitely not asking like, do you like what this looks like or is this the right word? But
right.
we wanted to make it more of an like this is what we are doing as a company versus well, this is something marketing did and now you must adopt it. The
Yeah.
second thing we're doing a lot of is just situational training and a lot of going back to the old role playing and talking about how we show up to different meetings and really I what I really love right now is that we're talking a lot about our clients and the why, which is so
Mhm.
basic, but under really understanding like why do they care? Like why? And going back to the old, Simon Sinek and all that other stuff, and
Yep.
really just
Yep.
going back to basics, especially in this really challenging economic times in our industry, of doing that. And what that looks like is when I'm meeting with some of our teams, we talk about why do you think they're so like, what's your pain points right now? And why do you think they're doing this project right now? And all this stuff. And then it then helps us have this conversation with them that is able to say, well, what we like to do is bring creative problem solving to
Mhm.
a problem, which everybody says, but how does that show up in the GBBN way? And that's really what we are focusing on right now.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
I had
Uh,
a really good friend of mine, maybe he's on this podcast. Um, the book I got last year from him was Unreasonable Hospitality, and I don't know if you
Ah,
guys have dug into that or not, but we just finished
I
studying
just
that
pulled it up.
here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of that sort of mixture of, yeah, what are our clients needing and how can we sort of wow them and a little bit of that. So, yeah.
I read that over we do a winter break here, so we take off the 2 weeks, and that's what I read over Christmas, for me, and, I was really I went into it like, "Okay, everybody's talking about it, blah, blah, blah," but I came out of it, I'm like, "There's some really good stuff," and I think what I really loved about it was the focus on the internal like, focus on your employees, and if
mhm,
they live and breathe your brand, then that makes your job so much easier, and if we're all aligned on a purpose, which is I know is a big part of this podcast, then the culture will be aligned and your clients will feel it, so I'm definitely trying to figure out how to take this into our firm.
yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
w a as I love the book. It's one of my favorite business books of the last 10 years, and
Yeah.
I keep coming back to different ideas in it, and one of the ideas that has been resurfacing for me recently, because 'cause we've been thinking a lot about how do, firms differentiate themselves, the ideas, that they have in the book about, well, instead of focusing on wine, which everybody does, right? We're gonna focus on
Mhm.
coffee and beer. It's not that we're ignoring wine,
Mhm.
but everybody does that and everybody claims to have the best, but we can actually carve out a space that is unique to us and differentiated by focusing on these other areas. Um,
Yeah.
you said something, a second ago about the process when you went through your rebrand of bringing a team together. And one of the things that we observe is the impact of leadership in an organization on the success of a rebrand. And your title is Chief Marketing Officer. You're a principal in the firm. I assume that means that you have a seat at the leadership table. So I'm wondering, how has that changed the way that you're thinking about, or the firm is thinking about, marketing's role in things like firm culture and decision making, and maybe alongside that, what was the role for you of the rest of leadership going through that rebrand?
Yes, I feel like the way I have been able to be at the table, and I also say stay at the table.
Hmm.
And is I when I am in that room, I am bringing the voice of the client. That is why it's become my like trademark a little bit because I say as the human in the room, I call shenanigans, but and I always say because it gives me a different lens and it really allows me an opportunity to share a different perspective and being able to and tie it to people's goals and what they're trying to achieve. And one of the things I say is like if I'm bringing the voice of the client in the room, then I have to be absolutely prepared to bring that voice. So what that means for me is I'm constantly reading, researching. I'm looking at the economic reports. I read the Beige Book by the Federal Reserve every quarter. I'm looking at the ABI ratings. I'm looking at
Mhm.
all my marketing research. I'm also doing everything I can do to talk to clients, whether they're current clients or clients that we want to land or even more like a avatar client. I'm having
Hmm.
conversations, like understanding what they need, what we can give them. Because if I can't bring those perspectives into the room, then I'm just filling a seat. So that's where I really am trying to bring some different perspectives, bring some different
Mhm.
ideas. I listen a lot in those conversations, just like we do with our clients of like, where are the pain points? And
Hmm.
I really try to follow up and help people be successful. I have a skill set that they don't have. They're amazing architects. I don't have that skill set. So I'm really trying to think about how can we complement our skill sets so that we can be successful as a company. And I feel like that's how in that room what people expect me to bring and
Right.
how I keep adding the value.
Yeah. So when you're in that sort of that leadership kind of position and you're at the table, is there something that you think or what do you think most people misunderstand about marketing and professional services, especially in the architectural world? Like, what do you think that they're not like? Where's their pinch point?
I think a lot of times they think that, we're very transactional, right? We aren't the strategic look into the future. And I'm very lucky of where I am right now that we are seen as like helping them solve a problem to help us be successful, bringing fresh ideas to get around closed doors or to get around where's our next office? What's our next market service? Like
Mhm.
those kind of things. So speaking to some of my friends in the marketing space and some of the struggles that they have, I think a lot of times people think marketing is just there to do proposals and
Mhm.
interviews and
Yeah.
holiday gifts and gift card, all this stuff is
Yeah.
so transactional. So what I always like to think about is every single marketing activity that we do within my team, it should have three purposes. It should either be helping us find the next client or the next project. It should be helping us attract or retain talent, so our
Mhm.
internal audiences, and it should be building our brand in a way that we want to be. So it needs to be in places that we want to be seen and recognized in.
Mhm.
If the activity doesn't fall within one of those three strategic reasons, then we really need to evaluate the return on investment and how it's actually going to help us get towards our vision statement, our goals and things like that. And what that has been able to really organize our workflow into that, what that's been able to do is we've been able to shed some of the things that are making people's lives easier, that isn't helping us build our brand or win
Right.
work, and really be able to focus on the activities that will help us be successful in the end.
Wow,
Okay.
that's a
Right.
master class right there for anyone who's listening, and leading a marketing team in a professional service firm. Those 3 things, perfectly said. Um, one of them, you talked about with recruiting and retention really gets to this connection between that employee experience and the client
Mhm.
experience, how those things are, connected, how they play out in a design firm. So in your experience, what makes that work well, and where does it tend to, kind of break down?
I think one of the most important relationships that a marketer should have in their firm is with their HR professional, whether it's their CHRO, their director of learning and development, their COO, whomever is responsible for the recruiting and keeping the company culture going. You should have an crazy good relationship with them
Mhm.
because that is how you really can start to make sure that the goals are aligned, that you are moving towards the right culture. We work so closely with our HR team, our learning and development team, which is our professional development team, to really think about how can marketing and that operational function work together to help us both achieve our goals. A lot of times I see administrative roles in our firms be really segregate, not together. They're separate and they're all doing their own things. And it's like, hey, if we could all just work together, then we can really help move the needle forward. It also helps with some of the more technical side for them to see us as an essential part of a practice. I think BRK Ingalls coined the thing, business and design do not have to be in opposition. They can
Mhm.
support each other.
Yeah.
We are not overhead. We are helping you. The number one line I say here is my job is to give you the next badass project to work on in this firm. And if I'm doing my job right, then you get to do cool designs. So I think that is really a big part of it. So you got to have a great partnership with that
Mhm.
team to make sure you're creating that culture and doing the great things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jennifer, let's talk just a second about GBBN and kind of the work you do. As a firm, you obviously work across complex project types, diverse communities. I mean, Cincinnati to Beijing; those are not the same. Um, and so I imagine that trying to balance a consistency of your brand but yet you got to respond to all these very different clients and cultures and context. How do you sort of approach that? How do you balance that consistency?
The key to consistency is to have a core message and to have
Mm,
an aligned message that everybody understands that will help. And that for us starts with our vision statement. We start with our vision, then our guiding principles, so our mission and our purpose and all that great stuff. And then we move into what that means for the brand. And if you have that core message, then you can shape it to the different audiences. And when I think about that, I think a lot about my parenting style, right? I have 2 kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I think, okay, one of my husband and I, we're very like, you have to be kind. You have to be kind to everybody, no matter if they're not nice to you. That is a core principle of our family is kindness.
mhm,
So I have a daughter who is a lot like me. She's got a lot of big emotions. She wants to debate it. She wants to talk about it. So when we're talking about that as a guiding principle, I know I got to be prepared to talk through things. I'm gonna have to debate things. I'm gonna have to be like, well, maybe they were mean because I had a bad day today, but we still need to understand why.
Mm,
And she needs to go through that. My son, he's 13. He's a black and white thinker. You just need to tell him the rule, why, and what will happen, and he's down with it. And that's kind of like from a healthcare to a higher education, like we understand that at the core, this is what our firm stands for. But we need to meet them where they are and share information with them that so in the way that they will receive it.
mhm.
And someone I had a less experienced associate asked me once, like, this feels like we're changing our message or kind of playing the system a little bit. And I'm like, people can do that, but for us, it's really about if you're communicating if I'm communicating with you and your audience, my job is to make sure that you can understand my point of view and my perspectives and the place that you are instead of asking you to you need to understand me. It's just being as part of
Mm,
building a relationship, right? The give and
right,
take,
right.
and understanding where people are. And so that's a lot of we talk a lot about our different audiences and where they are from even if they're a different project type, they're in a different location, or they're in
Mhm,
a different role in their organization. They need different information at different times to really understand how we can help them. And that's what we really focus on. But it always has to come back to that core message, right? If you're
mhm,
changing your message every time, then your brand's going to be just everywhere. But if you can always come back to that core message, then you can really try to build a authentic relationship and they'll see you as actually helping instead of
right.
just adding more noise.
Yeah, good points.
how do you build that internal alignment that you talked about?
So it all started with the rebrand 10 years ago, and now it's been 10 years. So we're redoing our positioning and our differentiation,
Yeah.
and because it has been over, especially with the change since COVID and how buyers are buying differently,
Mhm.
and how hard differentiation is right now. It's been hard, and I think I mean, I will say a lesson learned. I think over the last couple of years, we started to change our message to
Mm,
shape an audience instead of staying true with our core message. It's so hard, especially as you're trying to do whatever you can do to close work. So I think that's where it just, again, having your marketing at the table for strategic planning, having marketing in the right go, no go meetings, having just making sure that your presence is where it needs to be, where those conversations are had is how we try to do it here.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, Jennifer, I think, and you talked about this a little bit. I think many firms do struggle to move marketing from that idea of like, yeah, it's a support admin function,
Mhm.
check the box, to something that's much more strategic. I know here in our firm, we're probably like you. We actually have a marketing person who is a strategic thinker, and we really leverage that. Um, but I still think a lot of firms struggle to do that.
Right.
Like maybe I don't know what has helped you kind of build that credibility and influence inside the firm, and what advice would you give other folks who are sort of struggling with that that transition, how to make that happen? What might be a piece of advice for them?
I I would the voice of the client for me, like, always
Hmm.
bringing that perspective and being consistent of, "Okay, Jennifer's showing up now as this." But I just like we do with our clients, it is anticipating the pain points. I spend a lot of time with one-on-one with our market leaders and understanding what their goals are and how marketing can help instead of
Mhm.
waiting for them to come to me and say, I just can't get this client to call me back, or I need to do a campaign that we do theaters or something like that. Like I tried it. I think if you're bringing them because of where marketers are in our day to day, we
Mhm.
are constantly putting out fires. And I will speak to the marketing coordinator and how every single marketing coordinator needs like gold and hugs and candy and puppies because it's got to be the hardest job and they're amazing people. But what happens is marketing tends to get into more of a putting out fires versus strategy. And we're just tired, right? It's tiring, and it's hard to keep positive thoughts there. But my advice is try. I set time aside at different parts of the month to where I get into that strategic space. I do my marketing research. I look at client feedback and what are the big themes I can pull from that
Mhm.
and go to that strategic place so that I can go have strategic conversations. It is really hard to step out of that, and I completely understand it's hard to get out of that
Mhm.
space. But if we
Yeah.
don't try to take care of some of the emergencies and then move to that strategic space, then you're going to keep showing up to your leadership as only in that role versus in the strategic role.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah.
So as you've been doing your research and trying to think strategically for GBBN, um, and facing, an adjustment or a refresh of messaging and things like that, are there things that you're seeing that you think leaders of firms or leaders of marketing teams really need to be thinking about as it relates to brand or growth or talent acquisition or retention? What's kind of on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I think, Jerry, I think I mentioned this at S&PS Amplify is the industry right now, it really feels like it is at an uncertain point. What
Mhm.
we are seeing in the architecture and engineering and all across all three is we're seeing more mergers and acquisitions.
Yep.
So big firms are becoming bigger. We're seeing firms add more vertical services, so from the idea to, like, life cycle, everything in between. We're seeing this next level of firm transition, leadership transition, so that's meaning that, I'm seeing some firms go out of business, we're seeing them be bought, but there is definitely a leadership transition. Add in AI, and all the
Mhm.
other things that are coming at us fast and furiously that we're trying to keep up with. And I am really worried about differentiation in our industry.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel like we're using Shred AI to help with proposal generation, not as a way to reduce workforce, but as a way to help our marketing coordinators avoid burnout by automating some of the things that are just you just have to do and they don't really matter. But all these things are coming, and it would be so easy to use some of these tools and just not being able to differentiate. Some of the most I have received from clients in interview debriefs of projects we weren't successful. I've heard 3 times over the last 3 months that you all just sound the same.
Yeah.
And it's you all say the same thing, your process are the same. So we just went with the low fee, or we
Mhm.
just went with the one that we felt like we jived better with, or
Right.
something like that. And that's where I feel like with as we get to have more big firms be and I love you big firms, but as we get more people, like, just under one umbrella and we get more tools that we can use to help us automate, I do really worry about how firms differentiate, and I don't wanna be here 15 years from now and there's only 5 firms because we've all rolled up under some other firm. So, I think as an industry, we really do need to be looking at differentiation, and that's why I like books like Unreasonable Hospitality because we can all interpret that individually and differently, but
Right.
I think if we all and like I the race to the bottom on price, and I know with the challenged economic conditions right now, we're all trying to fill our buckets and all that good stuff, but I think we have to as an industry really think about what do we want to do to make sure that we are surviving as creative agencies that are putting great work out there,
Mhm.
and that we don't. Construction firms will say that they've been dealing with the commoditization of their industry for a while now, and I just really would hate for architecture and engineering. So what we're doing as a firm, back to your question, like what are we looking at? We're really looking at differentiation and looking at it within how does that show up? And
Mhm.
if you're not going to do it on process or a product, then how does it come up with your client experience, or where are you able to look at your profit margins and think, okay, is there a way that we can automate this part that is not needing creativity, or it's the over and over task, so that we can be more profitable here and provide more value to our clients. So that's what we are looking at, and just figuring out what that means for the
Yeah.
next 10 years.
That challenge of differentiation, I think, is the number one thing that's facing professional services right now.
Mhm.
When we've been focusing a lot of it, thought and attention on that, the brand truth concept that we've been working on that really focuses on not just how you do the work, but how you think about it. The point of view that you have is one way of trying to create that level of
Hmm.
differentiation. Because you're right, every firm does essentially the same things. And the
Yeah.
process that you go through is essentially the same process. And the
Mhm.
deliverables, particularly when you're operating at the level that a GBBN operates,
Mhm.
it's hard to differentiate against your real peers based
Yeah.
on deliverables and the quality of those.
Yep.
So I wish you the best on finding that measure of differentiation because it is the hardest thing.
It
Yeah.
really is, and especially I think for firms like GBBN, where we are a mid-sized architecture firm. I mean, there's days when we're competing with the large firms, and there's
Right.
days when we're just competing with local competition. And it's important that we make sure we show up authentic to us, but also understanding that those clients are looking for different value. So
Right. Yeah.
we cannot be afraid of the word value for architecture in the eyes of how is our client needing to be successful.
Right.
And that's what we're spending a
Yeah.
lot of time on. So
Yeah.
Well, you have read a great book. Uh, we actually just finished our book club here in the leadership on that, and one of the things I challenged, talk about differentiation because that's part of what that is. That's what that really is. That
Mhm.
hospitality piece. I said, what would it be like if coming here to a meeting was different? What would it be like? What would a meeting be like if you embraced the book?
Right.
Hospitality, what would that be like? And how would that make a client feel? So yeah, there
100%.
there are
Yeah.
there are kinds of fun things that yeah, we can sort of look at. So I guess I would ask you, when you think about that, like what is that one thing that you wish that more architecture firm leaders understood about the relationship between marketing and culture and long-term success because we've really kind of talked about that intertwining of those things here today.
Yeah.
And what is that one thing that you wish they really grasped?
I The power of us to connect dots.
Mm,
There, especially in firms where you can put culture, you can put design, you can put everything in different buckets. The
mhm,
magical thing about marketing is that we can help you connect those dots and tell the story of how all of this really becomes who your firm is. And having a great marketing team right in step with you is a way that you can go from your excellence to letting everybody know about your excellence.
mhm,
So that is I think that is one of the coolest things that marketers do is we just connect dots. I cannot tell you how many conversations I have where someone's telling me about something cool that they're doing, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this would be great to talk about here because
Mm,
this internal team is trying to figure out how to bring mass timber to this project, and I
mhm.
know that Kentucky is looking into this, so we could probably get an article there." Like there's just like and they're like, "I had no idea that this would anybody else would even care about this." And so we're
Yeah,
a good way to be able to really connect those dots and figure out what you can do with what they're working on.
yeah.
yep. Yeah, that's good.
So, as we kind of wrap up the conversation today, and this has been fantastic, a lot of our listeners are marketers. So, if there's one thing that the marketers in the audience should take away from today's conversation, from your perspective, what would that be?
Show up to your leadership as the voice of the client. If you can bring that perspective to these conversations, then you really are able to offer a different viewpoint and one that will help your firm be successful and also help your own career be able to progress faster because people, it's a super skill that we have that we can bring that perspective. So definitely think about how you can bring that. And if you do bring it, make sure you're doing your research so that you're not just showing up to the conversation, you're adding to the conversation.
That's
Very
great.
good.
That is
Okay.
absolutely great.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, thanks for being with us. It's been great, and you talk about connecting dots. Like we connected a couple of dots today, which will be kind of Mount Airy and NC State, so that's kind of
Yes.
fun. Um, there is a question we usually ask everybody as we wrap up, and this is it. Is one final question. Like, is there a book or a podcast that you'd recommend for our audience? And we'll see
Well,
what you say.
yeah, so I definitely we've kinda hit it over the head right now. I definitely recommend Unreasonable Hospitality. I just actually saw that they are, I think, April releasing a field guide,
Mm,
which they take pieces of the book and then will, actually give you tools to be able to think about it in your own organization. So I signed up for a pre-list for that. So I hopefully that will help us continue the conversation. I love that this book is getting traction in our industry because
Yep.
I do back to the point of differentiation. The more we all differentiate, the easier it is for our clients to start to understand that we are a real value added to them. We are not a commodity. Other people can't do our job. It is something that we absolutely need as a core service
Hmm.
to them to be successful in their projects. So let's all differentiate.
awesome.
Sounds good.
Jennifer, where can our listeners find you online or learn more about you or GBBN? Oops.
Yes, I love LinkedIn. Jennifer Sebranek on LinkedIn. We also are on Instagram. We have an amazing content writer that has put some great reels out there about how it is to work with us and the design process that we do. And always, you can email. I'm on the website gbbn.com. You can always email me. I love to talk about any and all things marketing and business development for our industry. So reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Well, that wraps up
Thank
another
you.
episode of The Intangible Brand. If you found value like we did in today's conversation, and boy, was this a masterclass, please take a moment to follow us or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Your support really does help us continue to bring these kinds of conversations to you.
And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel there. It's another way it helps others discover the show and join our community.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can please leave us a review or share your feedback or your questions with us. You can reach us at hello@theintangible.brand.com. And if you go to theintangible.brand.com, you can also sign up for an email alert when we drop new episodes.
You can also connect with us on LinkedIn, or you can visit that website, which is theintangible.brand.com. There we've got some more resources, information about the show.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of The Intangible Brand. And remember, the strongest brands are built on the experiences that they create, as we talked about today, both for their clients and for their teams.